Good morning and welcome. This is episode 11 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy, and I'm here today with Dre. Debut video intro. Dre.
It's a pretty impressive video.
There's a friend of mine, and a friend of mine now, and previously a student, Anthony, whipped it up over the weekend and sent it through, and I was like, "This is cool." So hopefully that's streamed. If you're listening, if you're tuning in this morning, good morning, welcome. We want to know if you've got a coffee or a tea, what's in the mug this morning. 8 a.m. on a Monday. If you're up, respect. And I'm joined today by the amazing Dre. Dre, you're a coffee drinker, I believe?
I am. This is a Greek frappe. So I made this morning. Thought to be a bit bougie this morning.
That is bougie. I like it. Greek frappe. Do you have Greek heritage, culture, background?
Yeah, so I'm half Greek Cypriot and half Egyptian. So
no way.
Yeah,
very
cool. Facial hair.
A lot of facial. Look, mate, I always say I've been growing a beard for years. No one can tell, though. That's unfortunate.
I can tell.
yeah. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Today we're gonna talk about mentoring. We're gonna really dig into Dre's experience, having had mentors, being a mentor, doing amazing things. So if you're a student, staff interested in mentoring, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think? What's your experience with mentoring? Is mentoring important? Is mentoring overrated? We don't think so. But if you've got a hot take on it, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Before we get too deep into the mentoring aspect, though, obviously talking about that background, do you have family back in Greece, like extended family still that you're in contact with?
Definitely in Cyprus. So my family's from Cyprus, which is kind of a Greek Turkish island. Definitely still have family there. We have family in Egypt, but most of them are here.
Yeah. If there are family back home, how are they doing with everything that's going on in the world?
They're doing good. I mean, the global health crisis is definitely having an effect on everyone. So I feel like they're feeling it there as well.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And your family here, are they good?
Yeah, they're good. So I'm currently at college, so I'm on lockdown. So I've missed a couple of birthdays. I've missed, getting to see them. So part of the rules here is, we can't head out, and I got to respect that.
Yeah.
But we're doing it for the greater good. So
Indeed. And I think that'll be one of the topics we want to dig into today. It's this idea of the greater good. And as we start to talk about that this morning on episode 11 with the wonderful Dre, Jade and Jers are saying good morning. They like the intro. So Anthony, if you're tuning in, people like your intro. We appreciate you. All right, Dre, cool. So let's dig into this idea of mentorship, whether it's as a mentee or as a mentor. When did mentorship start being something that you're even thinking about? Like at 5 years old, were you like, I need a mentor, I need a guide in life? Or like, when did that become part of your reality?
I think it probably started in high school. So I went to a public school, come from a fairly low to middle income background. And, I'm fairly privileged to receive a lot of philanthropy through some really great organizations. And, I wasn't really the best student. I wasn't performing as well. I wasn't too academic, but I guess things started to change in year 10, and I was kind of noticed by my school. I had like a bit of a grind that not many other people had, and I was recognized. I was able to get some scholarships, and I was kind of put in touch with a lot of really switched on people, but also connected with a really big network of philanthropists and people who have achieved really great things. So I guess whilst it wasn't a formal mentorship program, I definitely had some really great mentors through that.
That's interesting. And when you said you were sort of acknowledged for having a bit of a grind, what do you think? Was it like a teacher, a principal, like a year advisor?
I think it was my wellbeing coordinator. I think she just realized that whenever there was an opportunity that came up, I was like really desperate to get onto it. And that hasn't really changed that much now. Like, I find there's so many opportunities come back that come up, and it's, hard to say no to so many different things.
Yeah. Sometimes the one who puts their hand up gets pulled up, right?
Definitely. I'm here now.
You are, and we're very grateful you are. We're going to dig into everything you're doing now soon, which is awesome. And what did that first experience look like? So was it your wellness coordinator, you said, right? Your wellness coordinator is like, here's Dre. Dre's putting his hand up for everything. Did you get an introduction to someone, or did you like go through a program? What did that look like?
Yeah. So they asked me to apply for this scholarship program called the Skyline program, and pretty much what that does is that puts you in touch with a lot of like-minded students who are from similar backgrounds.
Mm.
Connects you with a lot of really switched-on people. This part of the program is a residential camp. Uh, formal leadership training as well, which was something that I definitely benefited from. One of the people who commented on the post, Adrian, he was also a Skyline recipient as well.
Ah, no way.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
amazing.
definitely a program that means a lot to me, but it's definitely, contributed to where I am today.
Yeah, no doubt. And where in that, given you were connected with other students, did you think originally, did you benefit more from like the peer-to-peer kind of style mentoring, or was there like a formal mentor, someone who came in like big brother, big sister style?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
In the time period, the peer mentoring was probably just as important. I was going through VCE and having people who have struggled like going through the current process. I think that's more valuable than big brother figure. Like it's important, but being with someone who's struggling with you is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things we often talk about in mentoring, and we were in a workshop recently together doing some mentoring stuff, is that idea of the circle of success and people that are wrapped around you. And I got this from someone who I get a great honor of doing some work with, Lynn Strong. She's amazing. And she talks about this idea of a circle of success and the idea of like you need different or you can benefit from different archetypes in your life at different times. And one of them is very much peers and what they bring. They're kind of on the journey with you, band of brothers or sisters or friends. Yeah, okay, really interesting. And then did that escalate into, so you're working with your peers, going through high school, did that escalate into having like the traditional like mentor figure? Or how did mentorship become something that continued after school?
So going into my first year of university, the program actually asked me to be their MC for one of their receptions.
Oh, wow.
And I was at the time, I think I was 18 or 19, and I was 18, and I was so overwhelmed. Like this little kid had to be the MC of a big reception where there are big donors, and they just trusted it on me. And I bore like a very big responsibility. So they put me in touch with some really good people, and some people who have achieved some really great things. One of the people that they put me in touch with was a person who had a business listed on the ASX. So definitely some really high achieving people, and I was formal enough to definitely be guided in the right direction by them.
Yeah. And what did that intro look like? Did someone say like, here's go to the 50th floor of the building, or was it an email? Did you get a phone call and it's like, did he or
I got
she
a
pick up
phone
the phone and
call.
speak with you? Like,
I'd met them at a networking event previously through the organization, and yeah, we met. We went to their office, and we just had a chill conversation, which is
cool.
definitely overwhelming for me.
And do you think, and definitely a couple of shout outs for people jumping in, and nice to see you again. Layla this morning from University of Tasmania. They're looking at new mentoring programs at UTAS. So really interesting. So you're going straight to some of the decision makers here, and also Jerry as well. Good morning to you again, Jerry. Lovely to chat with you. I'm also just going to pop in the comments here the link to StreamYard. So if you'd like to jump on board, platform uses StreamYard, so a quick plug for them. But also if you'd like to jump on and share your experience with mentorship, click through the link in the comments or in the bubble up above, and come on and tell us what you think. All right, cool. So do you remember, so in terms of being introduced to someone like that at a relatively young age, I guess, do you remember anything about what they said? Like, was it gem of wisdom, or was it just hey, this is me, I'm a human too, I'm approachable, come to me anytime?
Yeah, no, they said something that really stuck with me, and I think I interpreted what they said a little bit too literally, and I haven't really told many people this, so it's coming live. They kind of said they were talking about dreams and ambitions, and kind of like one of the best parts about living is trying to like realize your dreams and ambitions. And he said if you wanted to see what people look like who haven't achieved their dreams and their visions and their aspirations, go to a graveyard. um,
Oh,
and
Heavy.
it was quite
That's
dark, and I
that's some
was like,
heavy wisdom. That's heavy
yeah,
wisdom for like
that
a.
was very heavy, and I was like, little chirpy 18-year old.
Yeah,
I was quite
wow.
shocked by it, but I guess that's something that I didn't really consider, that so many people don't get to achieve what they wanted. So I think he
Mm.
was just trying to, it was a very dark way of encouraging me to get out there, try to achieve what I wanted. But yeah, I think it was good advice at the time. It was quite shocking, for me,
Mm.
but it's pretty good advice.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's like an extreme version of it too, but like also, I mean, we know the Gallup data says in Australia more than 6 out of 7 workers don't enjoy what they do. They're not passionate about it, kind of neutral or
Yeah.
even a little bit negative. So, and for some that's a reality. Some that is like, and we know from sort of like backgrounds and maybe friends we grew up with, like sometimes it's a single parent who's just doing what they got to do and grinding and getting through.
Mm.
And it's always a hard one. This is always something that's come up a few times on this show of it's really hard to delineate. We're not saying that if you're not living your dream life, that there's anything wrong with that. But this idea of if you're in a position where you've got choices and you're deciding between a couple of different things, that I've been in that position before and had friends in that position before, where sometimes that decision is I'll just do the thing that makes me the most money in the short term, or I'll do the thing that
Mm.
I think other people will respect the most. Or I'll do
Yeah.
the thing because I think ASX equals happiness, which like sometimes it does, and I'm sure it'd be fun. But I think
Yeah.
there's a richer conversation there around exploring who you really are and what really means a lot to you, and how you can live a life that has a lot of like purpose and kind of meaning in it. Which is something
Mm.
that, from what I know about you, that you've really fostered and lent into with the work that you do now. Which is pretty amazing. Like, how did that start? Like, one of the things I'm interested in from students, from a student level particularly, is I met an amazing young lady maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and she made a comment that's always stuck with me. And she graduated and gone to work with KPMG, and she started this business, sort of social business around
Mm.
mentoring, actually. And what she said was, she was like, as soon as I got a graduate role, I realized I was never going to feel old enough and wise enough, but I was just going to start helping people now. And she was
Mm.
like, I'm just going to decide that today's the day that I've got enough experience to give it back, pass it on. So I
Mm.
wonder for you, when did you decide that, okay, you've had some mentoring, you've had some peers, you've gone through some experiences, you've met some cool people, you're the MC at
Mm.
these events. How did you get yourself in that mindset that like, oh, I've actually got some really valuable things to give others?
I think it starts. I don't know if there was a formal, a start time. I was always one to help people who are in a situation, that I'd previously been in. And like, I remember
Yeah.
being in that situation in, year 12. There are people who needed help choosing a VCE subject, which is, what they needed to do for their HR for people who are, interstate or international, which is
Yeah.
a university score, the score that they use to get into uni. But I remember being quite, finding joy, I guess, in helping people who have been in situations that I was previously in. And that just carried its way, from year 11 to year 12 to first year of university to second to third, where I am today.
Mm.
And, it's come up in different ways. So it could be like the other day, there was someone from my high school, they got in contact with me and they just wanted to have a
Wow.
conversation about, yeah, it was really cool, to think that they even remembered me, but they just wanted to have a conversation about, the pathway I took, because I started off, in neuroscience and now I'm in business, and they're also in a science degree and they're thinking of transitioning. So they thought to reach out to me. So it was,
Yeah.
really touching, actually.
That's beautiful. And your change into business comes from a really interesting place. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that, about like where you sort of see using business for good in the world?
Yeah. So I had a friend who, I kind of used to bag business degrees. I said, they're not necessary. You can become a businessman without a business degree. I guess it's
Yeah.
true to some extent, but I was very set on becoming a doctor. I think, coming from an ethnic family, doctor is success is the, the motto that was preached.
For sure.
Yeah, but she sent me a TED talk on this guy Andrew Lo, Professor Andrew Lo from MIT, and he kind of talks about the role of finance in funding disease,
Mm.
which sounds something that's so absurd, but it kind of talks about you know uh, can we, it kind of talks about, innovation is not the reason why we haven't got a cure. It's often, funding. How can we raise funds in a way that, accelerates the fight against disease? So I
Yeah.
was quite inspired by that. And, I was seeing it, quite in front of me, people who have rare diseases where there's no funding, they can't get the help that they need. If you're, cursed or blessed with a disease that's, quite common, then there's so much support for you. But what happens if you're, in that end where you've got a very, rare and, violent form of a cancer? Like, what do you do? Often, there's really expensive therapies. Governments, won't subsidize that. How can finance play a role in, that person getting help?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting there how you said someone sent you a TED talk and that started that. I always say to students, and they're like, what is a mentor? Who is a mentor? If someone sends you a TED talk, they're a mentor. Or that's the archetype they're playing, It's this little gem of wisdom that's quite humbly if they send you their own TED talk, which look, I've sent my own TED talk to people before, which is a little bit self-indulgent, but I can handle that. It's all good. You're doing fine. You're all good. But I think when someone goes, here's someone who's really impacted me, it's like it's the 2020 model of giving someone a book, which of like, here's a way of thinking or a perspective on the world that might be that little adjustment that totally changes your direction. That 1% adjustment in direction spread out over, years can be absolutely massive. So that's pretty cool. Where in terms of mentorship and starting to think about how universities, staff, colleges can build in mentorship to really engage their students. You've been involved in a few mentoring programs. What program, or what about the programs that you've been involved in, do you think works particularly well? Is there anything like structurally how the programs are put together, how they're framed, how often or how the format people interact? What does good mentoring look like from your experience?
So is this in regards to like a formal mentorship program that like I've been in where I've been paired to a mentor, or?
Well, in the mentoring, I guess you can take it any way you like. I know that when we had a chat before we got on, we were sort of talking about mentoring as sort of anyone who gives you advice or guidance, more or less, someone who's just helping you. So in the different programs where you serve as a mentor or have been a mentor, where have you seen it done really well? Like, what makes good mentoring?
Okay. I'll maybe talk about my experiences. So I'm a Young Leaders Program mentor at Trinity College. So for those who don't know, the Young Leaders Program is a program that it's a leadership program for students who are between 14 and 17. The students are so diverse and so smart and switched on. They're from we deal with students from China, Singapore, Malaysia, India, Australia, domestic Australia, some people who are rural. So there's a huge level of diversity, and even with the age gap as well, 14 to 17 is a big difference. So there's just so much different factors that are considered, and all these students are just thrown together. And definitely my role in the program is kind of like we provide a lot of support to the running of the program, but we're also assigned a group of students that we kind of oversee, and we're definitely a figure. And I think one of the hardest thing is when you've got a pool of students who are so diverse, different nationalities, different languages, different interests, different ages, how can you be there for all of them? Like, what do you do? And I think that's the case with universities as well, who are running formal mentorship programs. Like, how can they be there for so many different people? And I think, one of the advices I learned is, you spoke about this in your workshop, is people love talking about themselves. So I think one of the first things is, listening, hear what people want to talk about, learn about their passions as well. So I was in a group of very diverse and different individuals, and I just needed to find out what they're interested in, like learn about their common grounds, who they want to be, what they wanted to do with their lives. And through listening and just hearing all those different skills, I can kind of tailor the advice I give to suit them. And I've seen that done really well in the context of university. So I've signed up to a formal mentorship program, and one of the first steps in being accepted as a mentee is to pretty much provide all the information about yourself. And then the university in turn listens and then matches you to a mentor they seem as fitting. So I think listening is one of the biggest steps.
Yeah, big time. And when you've been on the receiving end of that sort of listening, that first step, you ask them why they're in, their goals, all that kind of stuff. Has anyone ever said like, oh, my goal is to do this, or I'm not sure about this? Have you ever just been totally stumped? Like someone said, this is what I want. You're like, I have no idea how to help you.
Yeah, I think, I've definitely been in those situations, but I think it's about knowing that there are often people who know how to help them, and like tapping into my personal networks and kind of showing them in the right direction. So, for example, one student was really passionate about engineering. I had a friend who was part of a Spark engineering camp. I was like, hey, you should have a conversation with them. They had a conversation. I formed a little bit of a connection between them, which, provided useful to the student and also the friend of mine.
Yeah, definitely. And
I definitely don't know all the answers.
No, of course not, right? And none of us do. I think that's really part of the perspective of a mentor. And when I've had mentors, ones that have been really, really effective, I notice how much they actually move away a lot from the advice model and go much more towards telling their own experiences and tell their own stories. Very much when entrepreneurs tell their founder's story, and they'll say, well, I did this and then this happened and then I had this challenge and here's how I thought about it. And one of the things that I found most helpful is when they give you the insight, they don't tell you what you should do inside you, but it's the insight of, here's a problem I had. No one knew what I was thinking. Here's what I was thinking. I was deciding between this, this, and this. And here were the pros and cons, or here's the framework I used. And those different frameworks I find are things that often I've never heard of or thought of. And then when I apply them to my life, I can see how helpful they are. Like, for example, one of the ideas is instead of adding in more benefits, taking away more detriment. So the idea of like subtracting to move forward. So like when you have a problem in life, often it's like, oh, what do I need to add in? What do I need to buy? What else do I need to do? What else do I need to sign up for? Versus if you're overwhelmed and overworked in the week, it can be like, what's the thing I need to cut out? Like, I enjoy all of these things. Okay, well, I need to cut out one of them. The answer is not adding something else in. And I've been amazed how often that framework of subtract rather than add to solve problems has helped me get through things when I feel like overwhelmed. And then no one ever told me what I should cut out, but they gave me the framework to think about moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I've never really thought about things that way as well.
And one of the ways, and that principle, I guess, if you were to apply that to a mentoring program, where I'd love to see more mentoring programs move, is they're principle-based. So you're meeting with your mentor over a series of weeks or a series of months, and say over a semester-long program over 12 weeks, you explore 12 principles. And it's like, okay, you're in finance, I'm in finance, awesome, but you might have completely different philosophies. Or like you have similar philosophies, but you go completely different paths. And I think this idea of like principle-based mentoring has been the thing that I've never articulated. No one's ever said I was in it, but it's the thing that's helped me. When I can find someone, I'm like, oh, you make decisions in a certain way. And if I apply that framework to whatever my problem is, like there's a good chance it's going to work. And then I've got someone to bounce off and go, I think I did what you said. It didn't work. And they're like, no, you completely misunderstood. It's not like, it's not cut everyone out of your life so you have more time. It's like,
I guess
okay, so it's like working on the principle rather than the problem at hand. And I mean, that for me has been an unlock.
Yeah, I guess in saying that, so I actually start one of my first formal mentorship mentee programs tomorrow. So I'm meeting my mentor that I was assigned by my university, and like what you said was really great, but like how could I apply that to tomorrow? You said principle-based mentoring. What's one thing that I could do tomorrow, I guess, to make the most of it, or kind of like take on what you said?
Definitely. So with that, I always recommend the idea of asking someone about what are some of the biggest challenges or decisions they've ever had to make, and how did they make that decision?
Okay.
So not just what did they do, or even why did they do it, because that'll lean on their values, and their values might be different to your values. Like the how question here is like, how did you decide between this and this? And so, for instance, lots of people will talk to me about how I left engineering, and they're
Mm.
like, the good question is not necessary. Why is important, but then the next level down is like, okay, well, how did you actually make that decision? Like,
Mm.
well, I thought about, if I looked at it in terms of like opportunity costs of like, if I leave, I can come back a year later, I'll be in exactly the same role, earning the same amount of money with the same company. I like minimize my downsides, which is a thing that I learned from Richard Branson. Like about Richard Branson, having never met him, which I think is an important
Yeah.
caveat, on mentoring that you can learn from people you haven't met. But I was like, okay, so I could leave my job for a year, go traveling for a year. I'd saved up. I could do all the adventuring I wanted to do, but I had a guarantee from my workplace that I could come back a year later and go straight into my job.
Mm.
So like I worked that out. And
Yeah.
so the downside was very little. And I was like, the upside was really big. So that decision, like capping that downside and then setting it up where I was like, well, I might really regret it if I don't. But if I do, am I really going to regret traveling for a year? I'm like, probably not.
Probably not.
And like I'm going to work for 40 or 50 years. So going,
Mm.
okay, is the difference is my life going to be worse if I work for 49 years or 50 years? Probably
Mm.
not. So that idea of going and traveling for a year, I looked at it from enough angles such that I could say, actually, it really makes sense to do this.
Mm.
And it was life-changing. It was amazing. So that would be an example of if someone asked me, how did I make the decision? I'd go, okay, the difference between 50 years and 49 years. Do you want 50 years of engineering or 49 years of engineering plus a year of travel? I'm like, whoa, that's way better, So
I definitely, I kind of relate to what you're talking about. Like when I previously wanted to do, go down the medical school route, people would like their eyes would just widen when they think about the possibility of extending their studies by an extra year. Like, you know, they're like, oh, already medicine is 8 years, and extending the degree by that just little bit, might enable them to, take off a stress, work a little bit harder on certain subjects, do a little bit better. But they're so like like you said, it's like some people just don't really consider that minuscule difference between the time. But
yeah.
yeah.
And I didn't either. That was one of the things that where the mentorship was at university. I didn't feel like I necessarily had it, not in a formal capacity, not until I started working. And then in work, I met people who were 20 or 30 years on, and they were amazing to be able to say, oh, if I was your age right now, here's how I think about life. And that like how you think about it rather than make it a dependency. Like a mentor should not be another parent now that you're not with your parents. Like you've messed
Mm.
up if you're like, oh, I have a mentor. Now I don't have to deal with my own problems. I just take them to my mentor. It's like, no, like they're there to like teach, I believe anyway, they're there to teach you principles and ways of thinking such that when the mentor leaves, their impact is lasting. Because
Mm.
if you were my mentor and I was like, all right, Jay, here's my problem. What do I do? And you're like, do this. I was like, awesome. But then the next time I have a problem, I'm no more capable to handle
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
If anything, I've got a win on the board that's your win because you told me what to do. And now I'm no more equipped to live on with that reputation. So I think mentoring does the opposite. It gives you,
Mm.
like in all my mentoring sessions, it's like, oh, the answer to your problem, that's in these 3 books. Like that's going to take me 10 hours to read. I'm like, exactly. And if you don't, you might still have the problem. Like it's a lesser
Yeah.
of 2 evils, So
Mm.
I think rather than that easy answer, that's how I kind of think about it. But
Yeah, no, I can definitely work on that. I'll try to take some into account. When I get the the copy of this, I'll go through it and see what I can add to my session tomorrow.
yeah, are there any questions that you like to ask mentors or mentees? Like when you're thinking about going into this session for tomorrow, are there questions that you're planning on asking or particular topics that you're looking forward to, getting a second point of view on?
Mm. I like to a bit dark, but I like to hear people's regrets.
Mm,
To I guess learn from them. Not in their personal life, but I guess in their career and where they're going. Because you hear so often of people who are signed up to a career and they had the opportunity to get out, they had the privilege of choice, but they often chose against it, and they chose to stay. So I guess
mm.
hearing that from people who are a bit older is definitely insightful for me. And yeah, just to learn from what they regretted doing. I think you touched on it a little bit before about some people who'd been in the industry for a long time, and they had wished that they took, a year to travel as well, but they
Mm,
never did, and they still
mm,
can, but now they've
mm.
got all these different commitments, and it's just a lot harder.
Way harder, way
Yeah,
harder. And something, can I give you one of my regrets quickly? One thing that and
yeah,
it's,
I'd love to hear.
yeah, and it's something like I mentioned in the talk. I did this when I laid out my model of like what I think leadership is about service, and I broke that down into an acronym. And the I stands for an internal locus of control, which basically means I'm responsible for how my life develops and turns out. Like I'm the captain of this ship, and if things are wrong in my life, it's not always fair. It's not always your fault. That's oversimplified. That's misinterpreted. But the framework is that if I want things to be better, there is so much within my control, and I'm responsible. If it's within my control, I'm 100% responsible for controlling it. And that framework misapplied, where what my regret comes into is I was so good at blaming people. Like I could tell you why my colleagues weren't good enough, my boss wasn't good enough, my parents did the wrong thing, my teacher did the wrong thing, my sibling did the wrong thing, like that person I met at the bar did the wrong, like it was always someone else's fault. And it just turned into this self-entitled way of looking at the world where like I knew better. And the problem was that shut down my whole ability to genuinely connect and genuinely learn from other people. And
Okay.
and that for me, when I was like, really, I got it from reading all the books, was like, oh, it's on me. Like if I want things to be better, I need to like improve and change my way of looking at the world and be more empathetic and look for the things that I can learn in every other person and every conversation, and not always think that my opinion's right. And this is this great thing I learned from Sam Harris, where he says, everything you believe is true. If you didn't, you wouldn't believe it.
It's true.
And so at workshops, I always say that to students, and they're like, you see them like searching around their brains.
Yeah, no, I
And so
definitely, had the same reaction.
yeah. And so that took me a lot of time to go, okay, like if I look back at, I get students to map out, like draw a line of their life and map out the highest moments and their lowest moments. And then you take the sum of those 4 or 5 lowest moments and you look at them and you go, okay, what was common in all of those moments? What was I doing in all of those moments that led to things that I regret or wouldn't want to happen again? And for me, it was just thinking that like I knew better in almost every situation. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's a pattern. And if you pick up on the pattern, you can change the pattern. But in the micro, like in a day by day, that wasn't enough. I had to see that play out over years. But I was fortunate enough to pick up on it at 28 or 29 and probably save myself a couple of decades of pain.
Yeah.
So that would be one of maybe, regret's probably the right word of not having that framework earlier, of going, okay, what are the list of experiences that I would not like to avoid? What are the common patterns and what can I learn from them?
And do you find that like you kind of speak a little bit about reading and podcasts and, filling your mind with good things? Do you find that, consumption of those is kind of what led you to developing that,
Yes.
that framework?
Massively. Massively. I mean, I think right now, especially right now, but at all times, you control it. Your whole world is construed of what goes in your eyes and your ears and what you taste and feel and touch, and then how you think about it. But like it's your senses, that's your whole world. And so in some ways, like all of us construe a completely different world because we sense it differently. And one of the things you can control is what you point your eyes at and what you put in your ears. So, this morning when I'm up at just before 6 and I spent half an hour reading a book about an entrepreneur who's planted 170 million trees around the world and is like empowering farmers to be self-sufficient. And so my first half an hour of the day is learning about someone who's truly inspirational, who's lived like this amazing life, who's helped so many people and the struggles they went through and the principles they use in their life. And so like I would consider that a form of mentorship. And I had it on a Monday morning at 6 a.m. And, or you can but back in the day, I would have probably woken up and, watched an episode on Netflix at 6 a.m. in the morning, which is fine. But is that crafting my principles that I can use in the world?
I'm actually quite similar. Like I was watching a YouTube video yesterday and it was the YouTuber, he kind of spoke about 8 principles to like how you should be living in your life. I didn't agree to all of them, but one of the things he said was starting your day by learning. And, it was
Yes.
it was so simple. It was just like start your day by learning. That way, when you complete the end of the day, you can say that you at least learned something new. Kind of like the idea of doing your bed. At least you can say that you've accomplished something. And I tried that for the first time today, actually. I saw it last night, and the first thing I did, it was like, I was really tired, really, groggy. I really wanted to be back in bed, but I sat on my desk and I just, watched a TED Talk. I thought, I like TED Talks. It's probably the easiest thing I can do. I'm not going to cope while reading a book at this time.
Yeah.
And it was really insightful. It kind of spoke about positive psychology and, the role of that and, how that's panned out. And yeah, I definitely agree. Filling my head with something that's new in the morning is proven, in the one day I've done it, is being quite insightful. So
yeah, and I like that idea as well of you try something and if it works for you, it's great. And why I guess with lots of mentors, I consider all the podcasters I listen to mentors. Like people, I listen to them, especially when I was traveling and going to the gym when they were open. I was listening to podcasts every day, like hours of podcasts every day, just being in transit and walking, and all that like downtime where I'd normally just be like, my mind would be scattered everywhere. I was just putting good stuff in, and like just through osmosis, I was like, if I put enough of this good stuff in, like good stuff's going to kind of come out and manifest. And it's been a nice side effect. So one of the things that if you're listening right now and you're a student or a staff member or looking to run a mentoring program, even just a pool of resources, something like a YouTube playlist, which is something I'm building out right now, of like all the different things, talks, keynotes, interviews that inspire you, being able to give that to someone and go like, it's the digital version of, inheriting your grandparents' library, I guess. Like here are, 50 amazing thinkers that I really love and resonate with. It's why at the end of my workshop, I have that slide where I'm like, here's 10 books and 10 hyperlink TED Talks. So I'm like, this is, a lot of the stuff I just taught you, I learned from here. Like I'm not hiding it. I'm just trying to speed it up.
That's pretty cool. I never thought about it like giving a bookshelf or like inheriting your grandparents' collection.
Yeah. So one of the things, maybe if I can throw it over to you, Dre, as a bit of a public challenge, one of the things I like is the idea of accountability. And if you're jumping up in the morning and listening to a TED Talk, it's sort of ephemeral, like you'll watch it and it'll go away. Whereas I wonder, wouldn't it be cool if you did that, for, however frequently you did that for, whether it's every day, every week, and save them to a playlist, which you can do for free on YouTube. And then at the end of the year, it's like, oh, well, here are the TED Talks I watched every day. And you sleep in some days and you miss them and whatever. But like that'd be a cool thing of people like, oh, I've noticed you've grown so much in the last year. You're like, well, like I watched these 40, so maybe some of those ideas have kind of come in.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. That's something I definitely can do. I think it'd be cool. It's like almost a form of journaling, like to look back and to see what you've done in like a a new age internet way.
Yeah,
these are my TED Talks.
And I remember when I was at your situation, my third year of university in 2012, and there was a TED Talk. I think it was 2012, maybe 2013. TED Talk by a guy named Dan Pallotta he says like how everything we know about charity is dead wrong or something like that is the topic of the TED Talk. And he made this point. He compared for-profit and the charity sector, and he just compared how the different rules kind of play out. It had such an effect on me. And he made this point where he's like, high achieving students who are driven, want to like be their best selves, want to grow, have to make a decision between making a lot of money and doing good in the world. And like I remember like it was like the penny dropped at that moment. I was like, is it wrong to want both? Like, is it wrong to want to be successful in a way that you can be philanthropic? And like I could only go to uni because I had financial support through a scholarship as well. My parents supported me as well. But like without philanthropy in the world, you and I don't get to go to university. We don't get to go to the best university we possibly can. And so like I've always, ever since I got that scholarship, I made a promise to myself, like I'm going to do this later in life. But I think how you make your money, steering a Gary Vee line, how you make your money is more important than how much you make. So I want to do that and build a successful career and employ people through helping people. And like, and
I love Gary Vee so much.
So good, dude. Amazing. Like, so I like that idea. That talk at that moment was like, there was this decision and I was like, what if I didn't have to make that decision? What if, and it took years until I could find something where I was like, what if I can be financially stable, like not buying yachts and Ferraris, but financially stable and do good in the world and be really proud of the work that I do and enjoy the whole process. So that, like, that talk, I remember exactly where I was, who I messaged. I literally stopped in my path. Was just like it's just, he's probably had that effect on millions of people. So
yeah. What was it called again? I might check that out.
I'll find
I
it
might
for
add
you.
that to my TED talk for tomorrow.
I would love that. Dan Pallotta. I always say Dan Pallotta. It's Dan Pallotta. The way we think about charity is dead wrong. I'll share it up on the screen. It had such an unbelievable impact on me. So if you're listening right now and you want to do one thing today that I really recommend, this TED talk, Dan Pallotta. See, I still say it wrong. But absolutely amazing. No, so good. But even with that, and I don't agree with everything he says at the end. His conclusions, I agree partially with, but I think the social enterprise world can carry some of this weight. That's been a subtlety too and I want to make sure we let you go in a few minutes, but one of the things that's been really interesting is having mentors and not making them messiahs. Because this whole, you can get into a little bit of the cult of personality around someone.
For sure.
How do you think about that? Have you ever had a mentee or a mentor, and the mentee, you've given them a gem of wisdom and they've been like, nah, I don't believe that at all? Or have you ever heard something from someone like you really held on a pedestal and you were like, oh wow, I totally don't agree with that?
I'm trying to think. I'm not too sure. I've definitely had students who I've mentored, challenge what I've said. They're at different stages, and they're more, they're allowed to disagree with me. In fact, I encourage it because it makes me challenge my own beliefs as well. So I was saying, talking about my experiences, and they were like, I don't agree to that, and I was like, oh, okay.
How'd you respond? What did you do next? I
wanted to hear what they said. They were talking about, their pathway, how they're going to be different, the exception. I don't really remember particularly what it was about, but I remember them challenging something that I did. And then, I went home, I was thinking about it. I was like, this kid is quite switched on. He made me, I'm also a big believer in, everyone has something to offer. I can learn from so many different people, and through my volunteering and, working with young people, I've learned a lot. There's so many small pockets of wisdom, and being able to listen to people, I get access to how they live their life. A 7-year-old has 7 years of experience that I don't have. They've got something to offer to me, and they have the potential to share a tidbit of information that has the potential to change how I see a certain thing, which is definitely a really cool way to think about things.
I love that. A 7-year-old has 7 years of experience.
Yeah, well, they probably don't remember the first 5, but
that's funny. That's funny. Only because you mentioned that line. Can I give you one more TED Talk recommendation that I absolutely love?
Yeah.
Rita Pearson, Rita Pearson. She does a very quick TED Talk on education, and she kind of makes that point of how do you help a young person think about themselves? And the first time I listened to it, I cried like a baby. I thought it was just so incredible. But it's very much that. It's that 7 years of experience. She says you're not all bad. It's kind of her line, or it's not all bad. And I love that idea of challenging. And from a student engagement standpoint with mentoring, all right, well, how does mentoring, sort of what we're talking about today, how does it help student engagement? If students feel listened to, they're more engaged. If students feel part of the process, you're right.
I think my phone is going off. I don't know where it is. I think I have an alarm.
Classic. So as Dre figures that out, if you're looking for some quick takeaways from this, how does mentoring increase student engagement? 1, if students feel listened to, they're more engaged. 2, if students feel part of the process, if it's co-designed, if they have a say in their learning experience, a co-curricular experience, they're more engaged. 3, from an alumni engagement as well, or an industry engagement, if we want to engage students, they need to see that what they're learning is practical. So whether that's a college, whether that's a faculty, whether that's a leadership program, whether that's a mentorship program, building a dependency on mentors, I don't think is healthy. Having someone that they can depend on to go to give them principles to help them apply to everyday problems is invaluable. And whether that's people they actually meet, or whether that's nurturing a list of books and creating a book club, I would call that a mentorship program. Whether that's creating a playlist on YouTube of TED Talks that they go to, I think that could count as a mentorship program. And anything you can do to give resources, connections, people to your students, and then create a platform for discussion. Just like we do in teaching, we don't want to be, it's away from the sage on the stage model and more guide on the side. I think mentorship can do that really well. It's not Dre is incredible, but Dre's so incredible, I'm going to get him to solve my problems. It's great. Dre makes good decisions, or Dre has frameworks and principles that he uses to make good decisions. If I can learn those principles, I can make decisions that get me similar results. In the same way, if you want to get fit, you don't go to a personal trainer and they go, "You're fit now," and wave the magic wand. They say, "Here's what I do to be fit and look like this." Like, not me necessarily, but here's what people do to get really fit. If you do what they do, you'll get what they get. I think that exact same thing applies with relationships and finance and careers and purpose and meaning. I think for a mentor, if you can nail that bit, your insight in someone can be lasting, and a quote or a line can really resonate because it's bigger than you.
I definitely agree to a lot of that. I'm just trying to think where I can add to that. I think, kind of going a bit off, one of the things that are so powerful to me, I kind of spoke about it a bit before, was definitely LinkedIn. And like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize the potential behind LinkedIn. Like,
Yes.
to see someone's whole career progression for free, even, consuming that information in itself is a form of mentoring, I guess, using the framework that you kind of presented. To see someone who's, taken a Bachelor of Science in biochemistry and taken it to be a CFO of a completely non-related industry, the stuff like this, does happen. And I think the reason why I wanted to touch on that is because, for anyone who's, developing a program, I think a lot of that, empowering students with the skills to kind of find their own mentors is something that is really powerful. Like, a program can, pair someone with a mentor, and it could be a really good pairing or it can be a bad pairing, but what happens when that program is finished, where to next? Not to say that a mentor is not to be like a parent figure to tell them what to do next, but who do you go to for your next source of inspiration, or when you want to learn about the experiences of someone else? And I think LinkedIn is just being so powerful for me. Like, I was like, I wonder one day what it would be like to work at Apple in California. So it was like, I went on LinkedIn, I set the search to people who've graduated from Melbourne University. I set it to people who are working in California at Apple. I set it to people who went to my college as well. And I found one person. And I never reached out to them, but to see that one person who was in my situation made it was, information in itself. Like, if they've done it, if that's something that I decide to do, someone's already done it before.
Yes. I love that. And to add to it, making it to being happy and fulfilled. Like, we're both Gary Vee fans who always talks about this, right? That's why we're always pushing students to actually reach out as well when they feel comfortable, is check in with that person and see if they love what they do. See if it fills them with energy, if they genuinely enjoy it, because I know no shortage of people 10 years out of uni or so who, and I was one of them, I was the biggest construction company in Australia and wasn't happy, so I was there. And on paper, I could go back and talk about on panels about how I'm in this great engineering job and it looks good on paper, but I wasn't happy. And I think the only fear here is, like, it's accessible if you're looking at their career journey. I think what you said is spot on. And then taking that step to send them a message. And if they write back and they're like, couldn't recommend this enough. It took me 10 years to get to Apple and I love it. Then it's like, great. Like, it's that little bit of, and again, that's their experience too. And like, one of my best friends worked in the same job. I sort of followed in his footsteps and then realized, like, oh, what makes him happy is very different to what makes me happy. Like, there's room for the gray there too.
Yeah. Yeah, I quite like that. That's definitely a step that I haven't taken, just to see someone's actually happy in their role.
Because it matters, right? And we know more than 6 out of 7
Yeah,
Aussie workers aren't pumped about what they do every day.
yeah. Not even happy. I think satisfied. Like I think that's a
Mm,
bit more important than happiness. Like happiness is an emotion. I think it's normal to feel other emotions, but I guess feeling satisfied in what you do is quite important. Like
yes.
I don't know. Do you feel satisfied, in campus consultancy more than engineering?
Oh my gosh, mate! Orders of magnitude. Yeah, it's just it's the sort of like it's much more soulful work for me,
Yeah.
which helps. And you're right. Like some days are tough, but I think that idea of if you work really hard at something and you enjoy it and it's fulfilling, and you might call it a passion, whereas you can work really hard at something and if you don't enjoy it or it's not fulfilling or satisfying, it can feel like hard work to what end.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's Canva's been awesome, and it's awesome now that like it's all happening, but it's also awesome when I'm like struggling and scrapping around and trying to make things work and have no clients, and I'm just like, how do I get this thing off the ground? Like it was fun then, and it's fun now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope more and more people lean into something that helps them do good in the world, but also helps them grow and develop and challenges them every day. I think
Mm.
there's a line there between. We talked about this with Thanu last week. The idea of like gratitude and growth and how those things go together,
Mm.
and that finding a career that's nurtured both of those things has been such an unlock where I can appreciate it because I enjoy it, and
Mm.
even the hard days, I'm so grateful to have that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Dre, it's been fun chatting to you, my friend.
Sorry, I was just getting a phone call. I had to turn that off. It was
No,
really
you're
nice
fine.
chatting to you as well.
No,
Yeah.
you're a busy man. You're getting multiple phone calls before 9 a.m. We won't keep you much
You
longer.
know,
A
no, I
huge
really appreciate this. This has been really new for me as well, jumping on a live stream, someone who I've never even met.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a privilege, and I feel like I've learned quite a bit as well.
Yeah, cool, man. And I appreciate you coming to the workshop and then reaching out and having a chat and then being open to this. Your experience is awesome. I can tell that your heart and your head sound like they're in alignment, and headed in the right in a place that's true for you, which is
Yeah,
beautiful, man. It's cool to see. And just so
I
you know as
appreciate
well,
it.
we've had the wonderful Leila Daniels from UTAS. She's just said gold points right now, right from the start. So really listening into all this idea about mentoring, creating something at UTAS. So if anything you've heard today is helpful, we're really glad you've joined us, everybody out there. Lots of people listen to the replays more than live as well. It's like like 1 to 2 orders of magnitude more on the replay, which is always really,
Oh
really
wow.
interesting. Yeah, massive, which is cool. LinkedIn's a cool platform. So no doubt your words of wisdom will get out to many people. And if anyone wants to connect with
Yours,
you,
not
my
mine.
friend, no, definitely yours, ours, maybe, if we can be so bold. If people want to reach out to you or connect with you or learn more about anything you're doing, where's a good place for them to go and check you out?
Yep. Andreas Sakari on LinkedIn is probably your best bet.
Cool. I'll pop it down the bottom. Maybe if I can turn that from a little ticker as if we're into, there we go. You're popping up there. So if anyone wants to reach
Appreciate it.
out,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And if anyone wants to reach out and just let us know, what did you think of today? What did you get out of it? Do any of these kind of principles or takeaways resonate? Are they helpful? Please let us know. And thanks for joining us. It's 8 a.m. Well, it was 8 a.m., 8 till 9 a.m. nearly today. Episode 11 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow, join with the amazing Daniel from Swinburne, talking interestingly about how to find more meaning in a career, from someone who does amazing things inside and outside of the university space. So that'll be a lot of fun. But Dre, for today, thank you for coming on, and been a pleasure chatting with you.
No worries at all. Thanks, Josh.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have an awesome day.
Bye-bye.
We'll speak with you soon.
Bye.